We'll give it one or two more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started with today's lesson. Hey, Maria, how you doing? I'm doing good. I had a tough weekend, or not? Sorry, no week. This weekend was a much needed rest for me. Went out and hung out with some friends last night to celebrate a friend's birthday. It was a good week. I'm glad the weekend's here too. All right, I think we are good to go. So let's go ahead and get started with today's lesson. So this is lesson 14. It's crazy that we've been 14 lessons in now, but here we are. Now, from this lesson onwards, we're going to be working with something called tkinter. And now what tkinter is going to allow us to do is to create something called a graphical user interface, otherwise known as GUI. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. It's GUI. So that is that right there. So you might see that I already have some code written up in our little console section, right? This right-hand section of our REPL looks a little bit different. So in order to work with tkinter, we actually have to create a new type of REPL. So I'm going to open up my sidebar, and I'll show you what to create. So we're going to create a REPL. Again, in your templates, usually we use Python. But what you're going to do is you're going to look up tkinter. Again, this will come up with this tkinter template. Type in whatever name you want to, teach lesson 14, and you should be able to create it from there. And when you open up your REPL, it should populate with this little sample code right here. It may not look exactly the same as mine, but it should look a little familiar. So as I was saying, we've graduated from our text-based stuff, and now we're moving on to creating our own applications. By applications, I mean, things you click on, on your little desktop and whatnot, and they open up a little window. You can interface with the window, type stuff in, click buttons. The fun stuff, basically, is what we're going to be working with. And also what I want to do moving forward is I want to employ a different strategy of teaching you guys. Now, what I've traditionally done is I lecture, you guys listen, we build projects, you guys follow along, change what you want to change, and experiment. That's good, but we also need to develop a skill of, if I'm not there, if you're by yourself learning to work with a new library, a new package, how do you familiarize yourself with how to use it? And so we'll be using the tkinter documentation. I have two different links that we'll be using to help guide us so that we as programmers are able to familiarize ourselves with being able to read documentation, pull out important information, and then use it with our code. So before I continue, I'm actually going to go ahead and paste these links into chat so you guys can copy them and open them up. And again, we'll use these a little bit later on. They're not so necessary right now, but that's what we'll be doing a little bit differently this time. And again, this is really going to give us the skills where if we're looking at someone else's code or we're trying to learn how to use a different library, we can read the documentation, we can read someone else's code, and then pull that information out. So again, we're here on this tkinter sort of beginner level screen. If I run this, I think it'll load. My REPL is being a little, let's give this a reload actually. My REPL is being a little cranky for some reason. Come on. I guess it's taking its time. I'm connected to the right network as well. But if you run that, on your end at least, You should see a little screen. It should have some text on it or a button. I'm not really sure. I did modify this a little bit, and actually this is taking a bit. So let's actually go ahead and just create a new REPL. Just call this teach 14. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully this will fix our problems. Yeah, it says hello world, click meet. Perfect. Okay, so now I should have what you guys have now. And if it runs, perfect. Okay, so now it's running. So again, I told you guys, we're going to focus on reading other people's code, reading through documentation. So let's go through this code line by line. This is code that we haven't written. All right, let's pretend this is our first time working with tkinter. We have no idea how it works, but let's use what we've learned to sort of try and decipher what's going on. So we have our output right here, so we can sort of match our output to what our code is saying. So let's go through and just comment everything out. Let me tab in a couple of lines. So import tkinter as tk. Now, we haven't really done something like this before, but basically, I'm going to come down here and let me comment that all out. The only import statements that we've really done are import random or import time, right? So we've done things like import random, and then we can say like a random number is equal to random dot rand integer, right? In whatever boundary you want to, and then we can just print that random number out. That's something that we're all familiar with, right? Now, let's try to compare these two import statements, because they're basically doing the same thing, but they're changing one important detail. Import tkinter as tk. Down here, I have import random. Now, the purpose of having this as tk is basically creating another sort of variable, if that makes sense. So instead of saying import random, I could say import random as r. Okay? And now everywhere where I want to reference random, I can just put an r there instead. And again, you'll see it still prints out the same thing. Now, what is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of creating this sort of like shortcut, this sort of shorthand name for a larger library? Well, sometimes these packages have really big names, and it just makes sense. You don't have to worry about it. It just might clutter your code and whatnot. So it's easier to keep it as condensed and small as possible. And if you look up here, import tkinter as tk, it would be kind of hard to read this code if everywhere where there's a tk, you just saw tkinter, right? It sort of takes away from the important parts of your code. So what this line is sort of doing is just creating another name to reference the tkinter library. Again, that's something a little bit new, but it's not too complicated. Cool. So now let me run this again so we have our output to reference. So we're going to come down here, another line, line 3. Window is equal to tk dot tk. And we have those parentheses. Well, let's start with what we know. We're creating a variable. It's called window. Perfect. Now we have tk dot. And again, just with our random, we have our random dot rand int. We're referencing this tk class. We know this is a class because it's uppercase, right? Because remember, when we create our classes, we usually use uppercase letters to denote that. But we're saying from our tk library, right, our tkinter library, we're going to pull this tk class. Okay, so, oops, tab in, pulling the tk class from the tkinter, and we're referencing tkinter with the lowercase t to lowercase k from the tkinter library. Okay, are we all good so far? And actually, while I'm here, okay, perfect. Yes. All right. So we've gotten lines 1 and 3 down. Let's move on to line 4. Window.title, hello, this says walled. Let's edit this real quick. Hello world, let me run this again. Window.title, hello world. Okay, so that's my line of code. Let's see how that translates into my output, right? And if I come down here, my, the title of your window is reading hello world. So basically what this is doing is it's setting the window title. And I think the best way to sort of translate this into how it looks on like a Windows or a Mac computer is if I come up here, you see I have Chrome next to my Apple logo. It tells me what the name of this application is. So in our case, the name of our application is Hello World. Cool. Next line says window.geometry 300 times 300. Okay, so dot geometry. Now I'm thinking it's going to set the size, right? And if something's a 300 by 300, it should be a perfect square. And that's exactly what this is, square. So before we continue, let's just say sets the size. So we have the length and the width of our window. Just to make sure we're on the right page, let's actually change these values up a little bit. So instead of doing 300 by 300, let's do 400 by 300. So when we do 400 by 300, one of our dimensions, either our length or our width, should be longer than the other one. And that's true. Now it's a little bit wider, right? And now if I make this back 300 and then make this 400, it should be taller now. It's a little bit taller. So our window.geometry is allowing us to manipulate the size of our window. Cool. And actually, before I continue, dot title, oops, let me change this back to 300 so it all fits nicely. So dot title sets our window title. Dot geometry sets our size. This is like front end development. Yes, this is similar. Front end development is what the user sees. Back end is all the processing, all the number crunching that happens in the back. That's why it's called the back end. So yes, all this graphical stuff that we're doing with how we're interacting with the interface, that's all front end. And again, this is very basic. We're not, adding flashy colors, any special designs and whatnot. So this window is an instance, right? An instance of our TK class. Now, when we think of this window, we should be thinking about this whole outputted zone right here. Okay? And we're able to manipulate certain properties. So with this window.title method, right? Because again, this is an instance of the TK class. What this title method is doing is it's going to set this attribute of whatever the title name is to whatever we give it. And that's the same thing with the geometry of our application as well. So when you think of window, think of the whole application in and of itself. Next, we come down here. We see hello is equal to TK. So we're referencing our tkinter library again. And from there, we're pulling the label class. So we're going to say pulling the label class from our tkinter. Again, tkinter is also our TK library. There we go. It all fits nicely. So hello is equal to this text label. We see hello world exclamation mark. That's this hello world exclamation mark that we have right here. So whatever we set this text attribute to will show up on our screen. So now let's say BlueHandCoding rocks. If we run this, we should hope to see in our little text label, it says BlueHandCoding rocks. So let's Control ZL, keep the hello world there. Now we see hello.pack. That's interesting. Hello.pack. The name really isn't giving away what this method is doing. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to comment this out and see what happens when it's not there. So again, take a mental snapshot. This is what it looks like right now. If we run this, our hello world text label is no longer there. So with that, we can begin to say that, oh, our, oops, I did right. Okay, there we go. We can begin to say that our hello world or hello.pack, sorry, our method is basically what puts our label onto our window. It puts it onto the screen. Okay? So we'll say this puts the hello, because again, this is the name of the variable name, hello, label onto our window right here. Okay? Now we're going to come down here to our button. Let me just add another line. So we have a button that says tk.button. So just like with our label, we're pulling the button class from our tkinter library, tkinter tk library. We're creating an instance of that class, which is saved to a variable called button. And we're passing in the argument of our text being equal to click me. So again, if you look right here, we have this click me right here. And so what we can assume is that if I take out this button.pack, what do you guys think will happen? If I comment this out and rerun this again, any predictions? Well, let's take a look. We can always experiment if you're not sure. So I've gone ahead, I've commented this out, and again, this button.pack is very similar to this hello.pack, right? This pack method, which is a part of this label class. So we have this pack method, which is part of this button class. So same method, different classes. Let's see if they sort of operate in the same way. So again, mental snapshot. I'm going to stop the run, and our button is no longer there. Now we can sort of see a trend. We create an instance of our class, right? We're doing that. But then to actually put it on our screen, we have to say something like hello.pack or button.pack. We have to let Python know that, hey, you've created this instance, but make sure you actually go ahead and put it on the screen so that people can see it. So again, we've pulled the button class from our tkinter, apologies, and we've gone ahead and we've put it onto the window. All right, so we've gone through pretty well. Now we have this last line of code, tk. So from our tkinter library, we're going to run a main loop. Well, the name really isn't giving that away for me, right? I'm not able to tell, with these are easy. It's, oh, I'm creating a button. I'm going to pack that onto my screen. Main loop doesn't really give it away. So let's try our old commented out run technique. So I've commented it out. Everything seems to work. Nothing's going wrong. My output is fine. No errors. So this is where I sort of have to explain now. So what your tkinter.mainLoop is doing is think of a graphical user interface, right? Think of this application in front of you as something that's in a constant loop, okay? And what tk.mainLoop does is it keeps you contained within this section of the code. Everything that's contained within the creation of a tkinter window, of a tk class, and its main loop. So if I come down here and I print hello world, it doesn't get printed out. Why? Because I'm constantly in this tkinter main loop. This section of code that's blocked together is going to keep running on its own. And if I come here and I remove this, you see it's the same thing, but the reason we have that tkinter.main loop is to prevent issues with your code breaking. That's sort of a really brief way of explaining it. But basically the rule of thumb, and we'll explore this more, is add a main loop or call the main loop method when you sort of finished up, coding out your GUI? So that is our beginner level commenting out of of the code that REPL gave us to work with. And just from going through this alone, right, going through each line, using what we know, we sort of learned some very important things about tkinter, right? You always want to start by creating an instance of your tk class, right? You always want to end by calling the main loop method of the tkinter, or sorry, the main loop function, right? This is not a part of a class, it's part of the library. This main loop function from the tkinter library. We've learned how buttons work. We've learned how we can add text labels. We've learned how we add them onto our screen so that they can actually be seen. We've learned how to create the window title. We've learned how to create the window geometry. Pretty awesome, right, guys? Like, just from reading alone, we've learned so much. So let's take what we know, and again, we're going to create something very similar to this, basically a clone. But I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, and let's move this into a file that we can reference later on if we need to. And we'll just call this samplecode.py. I'll plop our code down in there. So now let's use what we know to create something very similar to this, okay? So let's start with the basics. What is the first thing you need to do? Well, you got to import tkinter. That's the only way you can use it. So we'll say import tkinter as tk. Right? Pretty straightforward. But what do I want to do with this project? Let's think of some ideas. Let's create a program. Create a program that asks the user to click a button. When that button is clicked, their name will be printed out to the console right here. Okay, we've got what our mission objective is. So let's go ahead and get started working on that. So the first thing we need to do is create our window element. Right? Because if we run this, we've got nothing. So window is equal to, from our tkinter library, we're going to pull our tk class, right? And then we'll say window.title. We'll call this our first tkinter program. All right. So again, if I run this, you see it works. Our first tkinter program. We haven't set the geometry. We haven't added that main loop. But again, it still works when you don't have that main loop. So let's set our geometry now. I'll say window. And actually, you'll note that when you don't set geometry, it automatically defaults to a specific value. But let's add our own. Say window.geometry, geometry. I think I spelled that right. Yeah. We'll just make it a 400 by 400. 400 tall, 400 wide. And the 400 is done in pixels. Again, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. Run this. That's kind of too big. It's kind of hard to fill the screen. Yeah, let's make it like 300 by 300 now. I want it to be able to see, everyone to see it in the corner as well. Okay. Nice. So window.geometry, 300 by 300. Now, the first thing I said is I wanted to create a program that asks the user to click a button. So if I want to have something that says, click this button, that's best done with a label. So we'll say click label, right, is equal to, from our tk class, we're pulling that label object. We'll say text is equal to click this button. Run this. No errors, but nothing is showing up. So we need to make sure we add click label dot pack. What is this going to do? It's just going to push it onto our screen, onto our window, so that we can actually see it. And there we go. Click this button. Cool. So we've completed our first, section of our objective. Our next thing is click a button. So we need to have that button there in the first place. So we'll say, we'll just call this button to click. We'll say that is going to be from our TK library. We're going to pull that button class. Again, this button is just going to say, click me. As always, we have to make sure we pack it onto the screen. Button to click. Okay? Button to click dot pack. Boom. Cool. Finally, we'll add our tk dot main loop. That really will bring, it's like a sandwich. We've sort of sandwiched everything between these two. This is our bun, if you will. And then this is sort of the meat, the lettuce, and all that stuff. This is your bottom bun. This is your top bun. So is everyone okay up until this point right here? It's basically a clone of what we did earlier. Okay, perfect. So we've created a program. It asks the user to click a button, right? Click this button. When that button is clicked, their name will be printed out to the console. Well, if I click this button, I'm clicking it, nothing is showing up here. So how do I make it so that I can actually have an interaction with the GUI? And yeah, that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to, again, as I said, we're going to use our documentation to help us. So again, we need to find a way where when we click our button, it actually prints to this console. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the documentation. Again, we're going to be using both sites for this example, just so we can see how differently the information can be presented to us. So tkinter, Python interface to TCL, TK. So there's a lot of stuff here. There is a lot of information that we have to sort of sort through. So let's try to figure out what exactly do we need, right? Let's head back to our code. We need something that has to do specifically with our button. Okay, we need to focus on finding information about how to make our button do something whenever it's clicked. So let's try to see if we can find something important here about that. And we can also do Command F. We can type in button. You'll note that I have this sort of sample program. And if I read this, they've sort of had import tkinter as TTK, but we'll ignore that. But if you see here, they've created a button class, right? The text is equal to quit, but then they add this command argument. And you can give it the name of a function that it wants to run. So let's see if we can look up anything about that command function. We have to give it a command argument. Okay, so that's what we've pulled from our first documentation source. Let's take a look at our secondary documentation source, this TK docs right here. And again, we're going to search for button. Button, TK docs. So when you want your user to invoke some operation, we create a button. And it looks like we have this command right here as well. And we don't see a lot more anything else about it. But what we can tell from reading this code, the sample code, is that this command will allow us to give the name of a function, and then that function will run. Now let's see if we find anything else. No, it's the same link. Okay. So yeah, the script to invoke when the button is pressed. So that's this command is equal to submit form. So now let's go back to our code. And we need to say command is equal to, and again, we want it to print our name out, right? And you'll notice with our sample code that they're just putting the name, right? They're not putting the double parentheses to give it the argument. So it's submit form, but there's no parentheses after it. So if we ran something like this, command is equal to print hello world, we run this, it just runs, but when we run this, nothing happens, right? Every time I'm clicking, it just happens once. So what we need to do is somewhere we need to declare a function, and when that function is called, it'll automatically call the print function with it. So say def print my name. It won't take any arguments. I'll just print Varun. All right, so let me get rid of this, and I'll just put print my name. No parentheses. Just print my name. I'm going to stop this. I'll run it. And now every time I click it, I get Varun. I can just keep clicking it, keep clicking it, keep clicking it, and it just keeps printing out my name every time I click it. So how do we feel about that? I know it can get a little weird not being able to put directly a print statement in there. We have to create a function around that and then use that. So it's kind of messy. But is everyone okay with that so far? Yes, perfect. So what we've successfully done here, we've created a program, right? It asks the user to click a button. That's our label. When that button is clicked, their name gets printed out to the console. And again, it works just fine. So now that we have that, let's really solidify what we know. Let's go through this again, because again, repetition is what's going to make us very, competent with tkinter. Let's go through everything line by line, make sure we understand it, make sure we know how it works. So line 1, import tkinter stk. That's pretty simple. We're importing our tkinter library, and we're basically giving it a nickname, tk. So that's easier to call. So instead of having to put tkinter every time I want to call something from that package, from that library, I can just put tk. Line 5 is creating a tk class from my tkinter library, right? This lowercase tk is basically tkinter. And I'm creating an instance of that class and saving it to window. And this window is this whole thing that pops up when I press play. I've set the title for my window. It's a method, and I give it our first tkinter program. If I open this whole thing, you see that the whole thing shows. We set the geometry to being 300 pixels by 300 pixels. We've also added a label. This label comes from our tkinter library, and it's the label class, from the capital. We give it the argument of the text. We're saying its text is going to be equal to click this button, and then we're just going to pack it onto our screen. All right, we're going to push it onto the window. Lines 12 and 13, I basically created a function called print my name that doesn't take any arguments, right? 0 arguments get passed into this function. And every time I call this function, it's just going to print out Varun. It's just going to print out my name or print out whatever I want it to. Secondly, I have this in 15 and 16, I have this button to click. Now, this button to click variable is an instance of my button class, right? My button class from my tkinter library. And again, I've given it the text of click me, and I've also set its command. Now, you'll note that this command says print my name, and that connects back to this function we've declared in lines 12 and 13. And again, we're not putting these double parentheses here. We've only given it the name of our function. And we've packed that onto there, and then we've added our main loop. So every time we press this button, Cheats is going to go, okay, he just pressed this button to click. It has a command called print my name. So just run this function, and that's going to print out Varun to the console. Pretty interesting, right, guys? Like, it's pretty awesome how easy it is to get started with tkinter. I'll give you guys just a second to add your own comments if you need to save that for reference. And then we'll go ahead and continue with the next sort of tkinter knowledge that I want to go over. I need just a second. I'm trying to find like my lesson notes because I just realized the ones I usually use aren't the full lesson notes. 1 second, guys. How are we feeling so far about this? It's pretty powerful. Oh, I sent it to your question. Is this the only way it can work? Do you mean like with getting a function to actually get called to print something out like that? Yeah, as far as I know, this is the only way where you can get the where you can get the code to print like that. So now that we've gone ahead and done that, let's sort of take a look at the next more interesting thing that we can do. And if you think about an application, the best thing you can do is have the ability to give it text, right? To be able to give it input and then have that. Yeah, can we put user input? That's actually going to work with right now. We're going to create like a text entry box, and from there we'll be able to give the user will be able to type something in. In our backend, we'll do some quick calculations and we'll print something out to our GUI. So again, I'm going to save this as its own thing. We're basically going to do this for the reason that we're going to get a lot of repetition out of it. So we'll just say print name GUI. Let's cut this. We'll paste that there. Cool. So with this, let's create an application that allows the user to type in their name, and when a button is clicked, the name that they typed in will get printed out to the console, right? Pretty simple, pretty similar, but we're adding that whole text entry element. So let's do everything up until that whole text entry, because that's the new thing. So let's do what we know. Import tkinter SDK. Pretty straightforward. Window is equal to tk.tk. Pretty straightforward. Window.title. We'll call this type in your name. We'll say window.geometry. 300 by 300 has never failed us, so let's stick with that. Right? So yeah, window.geometry is 300 by 300. What else? Oh, yeah. Now let's put our tk.main loop. And between that, right, we have our two buns. Let's start filling in our burger. We'll say, what do I want to say? Type name label is equal to tk.label. And the text will say, type in your name here. Cool. Type name label dot pack. push that whole thing onto there. On this, all right, this is what we wanted. We'll save some space here for where our text entry will go. But let's add the button. We'll call this name submission, right? Because you're going to submit your name by pressing this button. tk.button text is equal to submit. Again, we don't really have a command right now. Actually, yeah, we'll just leave the command part blank for now. The name submission dot pack on this. Oh, pardon me. And we have everything we need. Again, we click it, nothing happens. So we are a new developer. We want to know, how do we add the ability to add text? Well, I don't know. You don't know. So let's take a trip to our documentation. We'll head over to our old documentation, and we're looking for a text entry, right? Sorry, we're going to look up entry. There you go. The stuff at the top is usually not useful. It's some add, I guess. But we have ttk.entry, so let's look at that. Okay. So we have this text entry box. And what this is telling us is all of these sort of methods that are tied to it. But this isn't really sample code, right? We need some sample code, so maybe we can get like an idea of how people are able to use it. So let me head back to the TK doc site, and we'll go here to our first real example, and they actually do show an example, which I do encourage you guys to do take a look at. Their code is a little bit different from ours, right? They have a lot more stuff. So let's just pinpoint the stuff that we need. We're looking for something with a text entry. So we say ttk.entry. Okay, so that's how you create the entry. So let's do that right now. We'll say text entry is equal to tk.entry. And again, we need to give it, oops, there we are. If we just called this, we pack that on there, just blank, nothing in it. Any errors? Let's experiment with this slowly. So I do have an entry zone right here. Perfect. So it's working just fine. Cool. So you'll notice that these people right here in our code are putting a lot more, how do I say this? They're putting a lot more customization into it, right? They're giving it more arguments and stuff like that. We're gonna stick with the basics for now. We're gonna worry about customizing our stuff a little bit later on. So we've packed that on there. The next thing we need to figure out how to do is pull our text out, right? Because once I type something in here, oops. Once I type something in here, hi, my name is, how do I actually do something with that? Let's head back to our code, and let's see what they've done. Let's see if we can find anything where they're getting the title from that. So this is called feat entry, right? That's where the user is going to enter in their information, their numbers. Okay, so this is not really telling me a lot. So let's head back to the docs. I see this .get method, right, of my tk.entry class. Let's head over to our code, and let's actually go ahead and create a function now. Say get entry data, right? This is going to get all the data from our text entry box. All right, now what this is going to do, it's just going to print out text entry.get, right? We know that's a method right here. Okay? So print text entry.get. And again, I'll add that as a command to our button. So every time we press our button, we should be able to see our entry data. Hopefully it works. It may not work, but again, these are the things that you'll see a lot as beginners. We're going to try to make this as realistic as possible. So type in your name here. I'll say Varun. If I press submit, Oh, my name gets printed out, right? That's what's getting printed out. I'm pulling out that entry data. Okay, so now let me get rid of my N. Oh, wow, it's working quite well. There we go. So just like that, in about 20 lines of code, we're able to type in something with an entry box, press a button, and then have our code printed out. And this is sort of the general layout of what we're going to be working with. Again, let's try some other stuff. Hello world. Hello world. There we go. So that's pretty cool, guys. So how do we feel? Are we okay with this? I know I might get a little tricky with this, reading the documentation. But are we okay so far with the code? And are we okay so far with how we're interacting with the documentations, how we're able to read their code, how we're able to read what the options are that we can work with? Yes, seems simple so far. Good. Good. So now let's take this and let's add another element to it. Let's add something to it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stick with this general layout. But now what I want to do is I want to have a direct way. Okay, I want a direct way of being able to manipulate my application. Now, what I mean by that is instead of typing a name or typing whatever into my little box, pressing submit and have it populate my console, I want it to show up on my screen somewhere. I want it to like directly impact something that's on my screen. So let's go ahead and create another label. We'll just call this, oops, my mic got cut. We'll call this entry data. Whatever we type in, once we press a button, we want it to show up in this label. tk.label. We'll just say the information you type should show here. Whatever we type should show up when we press submit. All right, now let's pack that on, entry data. I can call this entry data label. I like having names like that so you know exactly what something is. Entry data label, and we'll just pack that on, right? Information you type should show here. Cool. Now we need a way to take this entry data. We got that, but now we need to reconfigure this, right? Let's take a look at our code. So let's see what they're doing here. Okay. How about we take a look at our docs again? Let's go to label. We have our label. Oops, this is not the right one. I wanted this one. There we go, ttk.label. So you see that with our label, we have this configure method. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to take an element and then change it again, to reconfigure it, if you will. So what I'm going to do is we'll say data is equal to textentry.get, right? Pretty straightforward. And we'll say, how do we say this? We'll say entry data label dot configure, right? Oops, dot configure. And now what we need to do is, what do we want to configure? Well, we want to change the text to something else. We'll say configure text. And we'll say the text will now be equal to data, right? Whatever we pull from our text entry. So let's run this. Let's see if we get any errors. Type in your name here. I'll say hi. Hi shows up right there. Say Varun. Varun shows up right there. You'll say Patel. Patel shows up right there. Now, what might seem a little bit confusing is if I'm looking at this top down, right? Window's created. Okay, I'm editing the window. I'm creating the geometry. What I'm getting at this point, though, my entry label data, or sorry, label does not exist until I come down here. So how is it still able to run even though I'm modifying it before it even exists on a top down? If you're looking at it top down, well, that's because I have this tk.main loop. If I were to get rid of this, oh, never mind. I thought you would have gotten an error, honestly. My apologies. It's been a while since I've worked with tkinter. But as you can see, we're able to type something in, Varun Patel, and it's able to directly show onto our application. Pretty cool. So how do you guys feel about this? How do we feel about tkinter in general? It should come off right now as being really simple, really straightforward. But as you should see from the documentation, there's a lot of stuff that we can use to sort of make it look nicer, right? To make it look more professional, if you will. But this is the most basic form of tkinter that we're using right now. But does anyone have any ideas of stuff they want to build? Like they should try, you should start thinking of ways where, okay, tkinter can really change up what we've done so far. Just give that a thought. Because again, a lot of those programs that we've created in the past, like rock, paper, scissors, games like that, we'll actually start making them with tkinter as well, which should be pretty awesome. So again, let's do a review of what we've done. We've learned, obviously, how to import tkinter. We've learned how to create a window and to set certain properties of that window. We've learned how to create labels, put them on there, create text entries, put them on there. Chat is not working. Well, I saw that message, that's for sure. Let's try this. Let me open up Teach with another browser. Forgot to do this at the beginning. Oh, I see. Okay. I've got chat open again. Okay. But everything, aside from chat, are you okay with everything, Maria? Everything should be pretty straightforward right now. Awesome. So now let's make things a little bit more interesting. You'll notice with their sort of real example code, they basically created something that takes feet and converts it into meters. You have a little calculate button. Let's try that. Let's create something that's very simple. Again, it's not going to look as nice as theirs, that's for sure. But with what we know, that's definitely something that we can do. So we're going to create an application that allows the user to type in the amount of feet, and then we'll print out how many inches that is. And again, if you're not from America, this may not make sense because the units are different. But basically 1 foot, sorry. I have no idea. How much is 1 foot in meters? So 1 foot is about 1/3 of a meter. Yeah, okay. So think of 1 foot as about 1/3 of a meter. And in America, or in any country that uses our system, 1 foot is also equal to 12 inches. I apologize, I should have used meters, but I'm not very familiar with that system. But 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. That is a sort of mathematical computation that we're going to be doing. So again, we're going to say type in the inches, right? That's just going to be the name of our application. We'll say type in the number of feet you have. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna take that entry, submit, and then we're gonna leave this blank. So if we run this, everything is the way we want it to be. All we need to do is start pulling that data, converting it to an integer, multiplying by 12, and then setting our data. So let's say, data is equal to text entry.get. What we need to make sure is that we're gonna take the float value of that. I print that data out. I rerun this, right? Because we have to put in the number. So we'll say 14.5. Cool. And if we type in something else, it would break. The cool thing about this is that if you go something like this, 145, fine, you'll sort of be able to go past the errors if someone types in something that's not valid. So we are able to pull our data in feet. So in order to go from feet to inches, we just multiply by 12. So we'll say inches is equal to 12 times the amount of feet you have. All right, and then our little message will say whatever many feet is equal to however many inches. Whatever feet is equal to whatever amount of inches. All right, and then we'll just set our text equal to this message that we've created. Let's run this, and let's try it. This is the number of feet you have. We'll say 12. So 12 feet is equal to 144 inches. I am 5 foot, 10 inches, 11. So that's like 5.10. What's 10 divided by 12? I gotta convert that. 10 divided by 12. Oops, 10 divided by 12. So 5.83 feet is how tall I am. And that's about 69-ish inches. And again, it goes, you get that error because again, that's just something that how Python is. So someone's 40 feet tall, there, 480 inches in inches. So yeah, pretty cool. Taking in data, doing some quick math, some quick computational stuff with it, creating a message from that, and then saving it to our console. So there's one more project I have. Actually, I have two more. We'll see how we get we get to it. But are we all good with this? Again, we've sort of been doing the same thing this whole lesson, but that's for the sake of repetition, just getting used to seeing new code, new tkinter code. But we should all be good with this. So I'm going to go ahead and just clear this out. It was a fun program to make, that's for sure. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do something very similar. We're just going to make an age calculator. Calculator will tell you how old you will be, or will tell you what year you will turn 100 in. All right, nothing too complicated. All right, so again, repetition, we should be pretty familiar with what I'm about to do. Import tkinter as tk, okay? I need to create my window, so I'll say my window is equal to tk.tk. We'll say window.title, we'll call this age. Actually, we'll call this my age, or we'll call it what year will I turn 100. We'll make this a little bit smaller. We'll say window.geometry. Make this a 200 by 200. I'm going to create a label. We'll call enter age label. Say tk.label x is equal to enter your age. Cool. We'll pack that on there. Pack. And we can add our text entry. We'll say age entry is equal to tk.entry. We'll pack that on there. And finally, we'll have a button. We'll just call it submit. Submission button. And this will be tk.button. Text will be equal to submit. And we'll pack that on there as well. And then we'll have our tk.main loop to finish up our little code burger. Run this. All right. Now all we need to do is just add a function that'll pull all of our information. So we'll say def calculate. What do I want to call this function? Let's call it year till 100. Okay. What this will do is it will get the current age of the person, right? We'll create that as an integer from the age entry. We're going to .get. And so if their current age is now, or to the current year, go to 2022. Let's think, if I'm 4 years old right now, what I can do is I can say my year born equal to my current year minus current age. And then I'll say year 100 is just equal to the year I was born plus 100. So then we'll just say, oh, we need to have another box. We'll say this is my output. We'll just say tk.label. X is equal to, I'll just leave that blank. And we'll put our output out there. Let's create a message now. We'll say message is equal to string. You will turn 100 in the year 100. All right. And then we'll just do output.configure. We're changing the text. We'll say the text is now equal to message. Pretty straightforward. Enter your age. I am 17. Interesting. Oh. And is equal to year till 100. Now we can run this. Your age, I'm 17. You will turn 100 in the year 2105. Well, actually, I'll turn 100 in the year 2104, but it doesn't really matter because this year I'm turning 18, so this should be more accurate. So actually, what this is say, enter the age you turn / turned this year. So if someone is 50, that means what's 2022 minus 50? 2022 minus 50. That means they were born in 1978, which means they turn 100 in 2072. Pretty straightforward. So again, we should all be good with this. We've done basically the same thing. So now there is one more. Yeah, you could just do year born plus 99. Again, the math is really not the important part. It's really about, do we get how to set up a tkinter GUI, how to interact with it, pull information, which we do. So one more thing I want to touch upon, because we do actually have a decent amount of time left, is we're going to be looking at something called a radio button. A radio button. And you'll know what it is when you see it. Radio button. Radio button. Look, these are what radio buttons look like. So radio buttons are sort of like these. If you have multiple options, right? Like if something's asking, which country are you born from, right? It's just there's only two options. Like you could say Canada or the United States. A radio button will only press one of them. And what I was thinking we could use this for was a game of rock, paper, scissors. So what you would do is you would have one of these options would say rock, the other one would say paper, the other one would say scissors. You click the one you want to use, press enter, and the back end, the robot picks their own, and then you see who wins the round. So that is the radio button. Okay. So now what we're going to do is let's see if we can get some sample code to sort of get a good look at this. So ttk.radio button, perfect. Oof. Okay. So let's try with how we did it with the entry. We're just going to paste it on there. Looks like my rep will reset for a second. Please don't buffer. Oh my God. I hate when it does that. All right. Let's not worry about that right now then. Let me get rid of all the stuff we don't need for this example. We won't need our entry. We'll keep our label and we'll keep our button for now. We'll get rid of this final output one as well. Please work. Come on, little REPL. Boot up. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So now we'll just call this radio button test. Experiment with it. We got a 300 by 300. We'll just say select the option below. Cool. Run this. We should get a setup that we're all familiar with. So now let's take a look at this radio button. tk.radio button. So let's just try that. tk, oops, we'll just call it button1 is equal to, actually we'll make it in the spirit of our rock, paper, scissors game. Say rock equal to tk.radio button. Let's just see what happens if we just pack that on there. Oops. Oh, it's lowercase b, not an uppercase. So we have a little radio button. Let's add the other ones in there. We have rock, we have paper, we have scissors. That's interesting. Oh, we're doing rock.pack. We have to put paper, we have to put scissors. Now we should have 3. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to set their text. Text is equal to rock. Text is equal to paper. Text is equal to scissors. Okay. Rock, paper, scissors. Now let's head back to the documentation. All right, they have their text. Where was the site? Oof. Oh my God, I have too many tabs open. I'm getting confused by myself. Okay. You'll see that all of these also have a value, right? Actually, what I really want is that, I gotta find it again. It tells you all the methods. Is it? No. I should really have this open beforehand. I guess we can use this. No, this is not the one I want either. I need to find the methods. Thank you. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to Where's our code? There it is. Okay. So now if I do something like rock dot, I'm getting confused by my own tabs now. If we do rock dot keys, okay, actually, okay, so these are all the options we have to work with. If we do rock and we put state, okay. Again, I'll explain this really quick. I just want to make sure it works. For some reason, these aren't deselecting. Interesting. All right, you know what time it is? It's time to look for some sample code. Radio button tkinter sample code. Ah, I didn't want to use this. I thought there was a better way of getting around it. Okay, in that case, never mind. I apologize. We're actually done for today's lesson then. Because I have basically the radio button uses a property that I wanted to explore in the review session, because it basically will change how we interact with everything. So I do apologize. but yeah, that is, I really don't have anything else planned for today's lesson. So I think I'm going to go ahead and we're going to finish up a little bit earlier. And I do apologize if I seemed a little unorganized. I definitely was, because my notes here and here were not lining up. But yeah, that's really it for today's lesson then. I think tomorrow's review, I'll continue with this because it's something I wanted to save for later. But yeah, any questions so far with tkinter? I really do want to encourage you guys to take a look at the documentation, to look up like example code on the internet, because reading those sort of things will really get you more invested in the code in the first place, and it'll help you learn. But yeah, I'm glad everything clicked today, which is good. There were no questions and stuff, so I think tkinter is actually going to be really enjoyable for you guys because we're going to learn a lot of stuff with it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and call the lesson there. Any questions, or are we feeling just good? You're okay? Awesome. So yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. We'll go over probably. But yeah, until then, stay safe, be well. Make sure you practice. Make sure you read those documentations, and I will see you guys next time.